Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to walk through how to create an expense report for the business purpose of employee reimbursement non-travel in the travel and expense module. An expense report in PeopleSoft makes it easy to transform a handful of receipts into a final document for expense reimbursements. But before I walk you through those steps, I want to share a few tips and tricks. As the proxy, your USCID will default. Be sure to change it if creating on behalf of an employee. Use the default accounting for report action to populate the accounting detail for each expense line. Just be sure to change it if different for a line. And be sure to have all receipts scanned as one document, ready to upload at the header level. Okay, let's walk through how to create an expense report for employee reimbursement non-travel using the travel and expense module. Let's navigate to the page, main menu, employee self-service, travel and expenses, expense reports, create, modify. So right here, your USC ID is the default ID. But if you are creating an expense report on behalf of an employee as a proxy, you will need to change that. So today I'm a proxy creating an expense report for Catherine Blackburn. So I'm going to need to go look for her USC ID. So I'm going to do that by clicking the lookup button. And on the lookup USC ID page, I'm going to click in the name field and type her last name. Click search, and I now have her USC ID right here. I'm going to click that, and now it's populated in that USC ID field, and now I'm ready to create an expense report, and I'm going to begin that by clicking the Add button. Before I begin, I want to make sure that I am creating the expense report for the correct employee, and so right here it's showing me that I am creating it for Catherine Blackburn. So to get started, I need to select the appropriate business purpose. And so I'm going to click the drop-down arrow here. And as you can see, the travel and expense module has grown a little bit over the last couple of years, so there's more than one business purpose available. But for today's purpose, we're going to select employee reimbursement non-travel. Just want to make sure and clarify and let you guys know that this business purpose, will not become available until October 1. And I'm using a test environment, so that's why we have it here right now, just to kind of give you guys a quick view on how that's going to look. All right, so we're going to move on to our report description. And we want to make sure that we add a description that helps us quickly identify the report. So I'm going to add supplies for ChemLab. And now it's time for me to add the attachments at the header level. And that header level is right up here at the very top. And we want to make sure that we have all of the receipts scanned in one document ready to attach. For this example, I have 2 receipts. So that means that I'm actually going to create 2 expense lines. It's an expense line per receipt. So I'm going to click the attachments link. I'm going to click the add attachment, choose a file, and I have my attachment ready to go right here on my desktop. I'm going to click upload. Okay, it's been uploaded. I'm going to click OK. And now we have one attachment. All right, we're going to move on to the notes section of the report. This is not required, but it is very useful if you have additional information for your approvers. So I'm going to let my approvers know that this is this expense due to changes in the lab schedule. All right, I'm going to click Add Note. Notice that note's been added. It gives you action and time. You can add as many notes as you need to along the way. Click OK. Now that the note's been added, the little comment box is showing some squiggle lines, identifying that there's a note available for approvers to read. All right, we're now ready to move down and to create our first expense line. So the first receipt that I'm going to create an expense line for was dated 7/15/19. So we need to make sure that the date that we include here is the date that's on the receipt that you've attached. The expense type, so it is cleaning supplies, so I know that is miscellaneous supplies. And I'm going to add the description, cleaning supplies for ChemLab from Target. I'm going to scroll over and I'm going to add the amount, which is $9.04, and that includes the taxes. So it's the total amount of the receipt. Okay, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to show you what happens when I click tab here. When I hit the tab button, notice now that the amount field is populated on the accounting detail line. There's a default department that's populated here as well, but you will change that when you add your accounting information. And then the account is populated based on the expense type that you select, and that does not need to change. All right, so now that I have my first expense line added, I'm going to add my accounting information, and I know that both expense lines have the same chart field string, or will use the same chart field string. So I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to make it easy on myself. I'm going to add it to both strings by adding it one time. And so I'm going to go to my actions area up here at the header level, and I'm going to select default accounting for report, and I'm going to click go. Okay, so here I'm going to add my string, and I've already identified that it's an active chart field string in the financial production system. And if it's not, it's going to give me errors. So you need to make sure that you have the appropriate information before you enter it here. So CL071, and I'm going to add 13200, which is the chemistry department. I'm going to add the fund and the class. Okay. You can click in each field or you can tab through fields. Tabbing is probably something that you'll do most often. If you are using sponsored project funds, this is where you would add your PC business unit of USC SP, add your project ID, and then the activity of one. But we're not using a sponsored project today, so we're good to go. All right, so now I am ready to click OK. Okay, now notice that the chart field information has been added to that expense line, but I have to create a second expense line because I attached a second receipt. And so I'm going to go up here on the first expense line all the way up to the right. You'll see a plus sign, and that's an insert line button. So you're going to click that, and then you're going to scroll down and notice now that I have a second expense line available. I need to update the date to the date that's on the second receipt, which is August 13th, 2019. This is office supplies, so I'm going to select supplies. In the production in the system, this should be identified as office supplies, so that will be a little bit different and a little easier for you to identify, actually. So I'm going to add a description, office supplies for ChemLab from Walmart. Okay, I'm going to scroll over and add my amount, $36.28, which is the total amount to include the taxes. I'm going to scroll over and notice, what's going to happen when I click that tab button. It is going to populate the amount field. And then notice too that the chart field information has been added to this expense line, and the account is defaulted to the appropriate account based on the expense type selected. Okay, so I am ready now to move on and save for later. We're going to click the Save for Later button for a couple reasons. Number one, it gives this transaction a report ID, and all of the expense transactions are identified with the number 3, as you can see right here. Also, it will identify any errors I may have. So, for example, if I've forgotten to complete any required fields, maybe I didn't enter the chart field information correctly, all those errors would be identified with red boxes. And there would be a little red flag over here identifying that changes need to be made. So it looks like, I'm scrolling down through, looks like I'm good to go. One thing that I would suggest is that you may want to save for later after you finish the header part of the transaction, which is everything before you start adding the lines, just to ensure that maybe you get timed out or something happens along the way. If you save for later, then you've actually saved that ID in a pending status, which means that you can always go back in and make changes to it. Okay, so I am ready to go. I'm ready to click summary and submit. I don't need to make any changes. I don't have any errors. Um, I have everything added that I need to. So I'm going to click summary and submit. Okay, so on this page, you can see that the description is showing that you have 2 expense lines. So just review the information, make sure everything looks good. And we're going to check this box to certify that the expenses were incurred for official business of the university. And then we're going to click the Submit Expense Report button. Once again, before you confirm, review all the information, make sure that you don't have any errors and that it's all correct. So everything looks good for me. I'm going to click OK. All right, notice now that the status of the report is submission in process. So I am actually going to click the refresh approval status button to update that status to submission, submit it for approval. So let's refresh the approval status. All right, now notice that the report has been submitted for approval. And now that it has been submitted for approval, I can look at the approval history. So we're going to hit our expand button here and scroll all the way down. And because I'm a proxy creating it on Catherine Blackburn's behalf, it is required that the employee approves this transaction. So it'll go to Kathy first, and then it will move to Department 1, Department 2, and then finally to the accounts payable office for approval. Just a couple of different things. If you select food as an expense type, that transaction will be routed to purchasing for approval. That's not any different than it is today in payment request. And then also, if you are using sponsored project funds, then it would be routed to the grants and funds management for approval as well. All right, so this is how we are now going to create employee reimbursement non-travel in the travel and expense module. These expenses, are currently being created in the payment request, but starting October 1st, they will now then be created in the travel and expense module. We do have a payment request matrix, or no, excuse me, an employee reimbursement non-travel matrix that outlines all of the expense types that you can use to create an expense report for employee reimbursement non-travel. All right, we have some webinars coming up. We look forward to seeing you there, and have a great rest of your day.